worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Hello everybody, good evening, welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby Blog. I am Cammy Black. We've got a lot to get through this evening. We've got Craig Manson with us. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening, how are we doing?
Craig looking absolutely delighted at some of the things we've got to talk about tonight, Craig.
Almost started already. Okay.
We have. As we shall continue through the evening. We've for those of regular listeners will know that we sponsored our first rugby match, Rugby Ball. We sponsored the Rugby Ball this weekend, and that game was Craig's Howe of Fife, who were away to Berwick Rugby Club, and we'll get on later on to how that game went. But for viewers, you will see the difference between Craig and my face. That might give you a hint to the outcome of that game. We are live at the moment on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So you can also, if you don't get to watch us live, you can download us also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Alexa, wherever you can get podcasts, we should be there. Patreons as well. If you go to patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast, from £3 a month, you get ad-free versions of the podcast. And you can also get access to the little podcast extra that we do after the main pod, where we have a little bit of we put the world of rugby to rights with our hands in the ruck. That is also live streamed now on YouTube in a special secret YouTube channel that we've got just for our patrons as well. Viewers may notice we've got somebody else joining us this evening. Good evening to Sean Phelan from Fill Your Boots Rugby. Good evening, Sean.
Evening. Thank you for having me.
That's okay. For Sean, I mean, people who follow rugby on social media will know Fill Your Boots, but for those who maybe aren't on social media or haven't come across it before, do you want to tell us what's Fill Your Boots about?
So it's based in its simplest term, I guess. It's an online community for like-minded clubs and rugby players that want to help each other out. Essentially, about 6 years ago, I was a captain of a rugby club, and we really struggled for players, and it was just a bit embarrassing, sort of calling up on a Friday night. So, cutting a long story short, created this essentially what was going to be a very small localized pool of players, which has turned into sort of a social media beast, which is now I'm sure we'll talk about it in a minute, but it's now its own platform. So it's just a community of people that want to help each other out on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday and making more rugby matches happen.
Yeah, so how did that kind of take you by surprise, the way that grew? Was that just you did it kind of locally, and then other clubs started contacting you saying, can you give a shout out for a player for us next Saturday?
Yeah, do you know what it was? Yeah, pretty much. I'm based in South London, and as you can tell by my accent, compared to you guys, Yeah, and it was designed to be something incredibly localized. We've always had friendly clubs that we have always helped each other out, but now to have like this, social media was a perfect place to put it. Have this localized group of players that would help each other out if one of the teams was short. And then very quickly, as soon as sort of the idea got out there, it was sort of snapped up by everybody else. And within days, this was 6 years ago. Within days, we had 1,000 Facebook likes and Twitter followers galore, and now it's turned into 25,000 people across the whole network, the social network. And yes, it's new. It's got its own social platform now.
Yeah, and so with this new social platform, then tell us about that. What's the idea with? How does that work then?
It's essentially a blank Facebook. It's a blank off-the-shelf Facebook, but it cuts out the noise, which is good. So it's just an online community. You can register for free, join your localized group, but it's purely there to help players, clubs find each other at the weekend. But then obviously to try and keep people logging in, there's a lot of resources that we put together. We've got podcasts and webinars from all over the rugby sphere and business sphere. It's been a tough 12 months for clubs. So I've gone to accountants to actually get some real world advice from accountants, from marketeers to groundskeepers to protein experts and all that good stuff. But it's really good so far. It's got 200 users already in the first week. So hopefully, we're trying to get a few more people on there, and then we can turn it into an app. That's the big plan, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this is a positive thing, Craig. I mean, you and I kind of both involved. I think we're maybe fortunate that Howe and Berwick have fairly well run and resourced clubs in terms of volunteers and having people kind of contribute their know-how. But there will be clubs out there who kind of kind of just the casual clubs rather than the ones that are in competitions who will need players over a weekend, and this is or maybe need that extra bit of help or advice, and this is going to be a positive thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've been in a situation myself with being a coach for a women's team, and on a Friday night scratching my head thinking where we're going to get 3 or 4 players to complete the fixture. So I think it's a fabulous idea, and also currently with the way that rugby is going, especially men's rugby at this moment in time, with we're losing players here, there, and everywhere to different. They're getting pulled in different directions. It's great to have a network. I think really the network is the big thing. Having a network that you can go to, and for anything that you need, it's a fabulous idea.
Yeah. So Sean, I mean, did the podcast then that you do, because you do the Fully Roots podcast we got and talk. I know I've been on the one where we talked about Scottish rugby, and you do ones with specific clubs. Was that just kind of an organic thing that you realised you kind of you would kind of get in touch with these people from different clubs asking for players, and you thought you should do something?
Well, really, it was sort of pandemic led. It was either sort of the concept or the brand sort of dies because there's nothing for me to do. There's nothing going on, or we can adapt and do podcasts and write some in-depth stuff, and then the final bit of that was, well, let's upgrade the website and make it into a community, and we can cut out the Facebook noise and we can cut out the Twitter noise and actually have a hub for everything to do with grassroots rugby.
And have you had much response from, say, the RFU and the SRU to it so far?
The SRU, absolutely not. No, nothing. I don't think I've ever heard from the SRU or the WRU. The RFU are always they love it and they're very keen to help at arm's length, but they can't back it, or they can't, because there's so much red tape and there's so much sort of other politics going on. it's really difficult for them to actually go, rubber stamp it, give it the approval that it needs. But yeah, I've spoken to them this week, and they're just like, yeah, crack on, and we'll see how you are in a few months' time, and let us know if you need anything. But no, the SRU and the WRU, no, I've never had a conversation with any of them. I've tried.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying, Craig, we kind of in the group chat, we were saying obviously at kind of the National League levels, and you can understand there's a reluctance to allow the sharing of players, especially at the tail end of seasons when there's relegation and promotion battles. But there are other clubs out there who are just social clubs who just want to go and play a game at a weekend, and are going to struggle for players, and that's where this is needed.
Yeah, very much so. Even just getting bodies through the door and buying a tin of juice or a pint at the clubhouse as well, that all helps. But also, I think
that's it. Sorry, Craig.
Yeah,
I put some stats together, all the stuff that we did. I had to present to the RFU in 2018, where we'd got up to, and actually, if the amount of people that we had put into games, it worked out to be about 75 grand behind the bar. If you think that people buying a couple of pints, but that was a tangible figure that we could work. That we could work out that by cancelling these games, and there was probably 200 games that could have easily have been cancelled. 50 or 100 clubs could have lost a combined total of 75 grand.
Yeah, I think that's. Sorry, that's exactly the one point I was going to make just earlier on, was the fact that we can get all fair enough up at the sharp end in National One or the Premiership and things like that. You don't want players coming in at the end of the season to try and help win cups or win promotion. But on the other side of things, there are an awful lot of games called off because of lack of players. And it's a great initiative to try and just get players playing rugby. The more players playing rugby, the better,
And I think there's that thing, and we've seen it in Scotland, Craig, where I'd much rather fill an advert on Fill Your Boots saying Berwick Rugby Club needs a shorter back row for the rest of the season, and come along and play for us, as opposed to there's the kind of the rugby agent Twitter accounts to say, such and such a club are looking for players to come over from South Africa and we'll get you a job somewhere, because that's not money back into the club. If you get somebody to come in and play for free, essentially, is much better than clubs paying guys to come and fill that gap. So I guess it's not just it's not just kind of we need to plug a gap this week, Sean. It's fine kind of making those connections between players who are just kind of wanting to get back into rugby and play again, and maybe can't find the local club.
One of the first people that I put into a game in 2015 is now the club captain of the club that he went and played for.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's 6 years worth of an extra body, because he fancied a game on a Saturday afternoon and hadn't played for a couple of years, and now he's the club captain.
Yeah,
those types of things you can't sort of buy. I get what you mean about having trying to bring in a South African, but it makes no sense if there could be someone down the road that could easily fill those gaps for you. You just got to ask, and
with doing the podcast, especially Sean, you obviously spoken to different people at different clubs across the country. Do you get a sense that coronavirus has had an impact on people wanting to keep playing the game? Is it, because obviously it's a big struggle if you had time off and you people lost jobs and whatever, that it's quite a big commitment then to come back into rugby.
I think at the time of talking to the clubs that the most times was doing those podcasts, I think they would say that actually they were in a good position. They had lots of people coming to train. I'm saying that a year ago they were having good numbers at training, but actually the numbers in England, the amount of games that have been cancelled since the restart of the season, 6-7 weeks ago, it's in chaos, absolute chaos. We played a game my club, we're one of the basement barrel teams. I love the club, but it's we play at the bottom of the Surrey divisions, and we had 16 people. This was only 2 weeks ago, and the opposition turned up at 1:30, ready for the game with 4 players. Now, we ended up playing an hour's worth of 9-on-9 in the worst rain you could ever imagine. But those types of things, I could have helped. I could have tried to help, or we could have found another game, or we could have gone and help other clubs down the road. But to find out an hour before kickoff that the opposition are only bringing 4 people, what does that do for the referee? The referee could have. There's a referee shortage, so he could have refereed a higher level game than 9-on-9, basketball rugby for an hour. So it's all those sort of knock-on effects that the pandemic has had.
Yeah. And in terms of one of the things, obviously you were kind of speaking to clubs about links with the Lions, over the Lions tour and stuff like that. Do you still get the sense? I know, Craig and I would say with Howard Fife, you've got links with still got the Horn brothers, and you've got Chris Fusaro still very strongly linked with the club. Berwick, we've got Andrew Skeen came back and played for the club, former Scotland Sevens players. Do you get that sense across the rest of the country that clubs still have links with professional players, or is it kind of detached itself now?
No. I think the RFU did, especially around the 2019 World Cup. They wanted that link, and even the squad announcement video was them as kids at the club that they started at. So no, I think there is a really good tie between the players and where they came from, and I think, to be honest, I think that's only going to grow stronger. I really do. Yeah,
because it's quite a unique thing with rugby. It's quite a unique thing with rugby, isn't it? Because compared to maybe other sports.
Yeah, definitely. Like could you say where a Mason Mount played as a kid? No, he didn't. He played in the Chelsea academy, so he's always played for Chelsea. The Curry brothers have gone through a couple of clubs together, and now they're at England. But they'll always go back. They'll always, even if it's just once a year, they'll always go back. And that's why I think there is a different. Rugby players are brought up slightly differently in that way, that you seem to know where you come from.
Yeah, and that's important, Craig. When you get that, how don't you? That you got these guys kind of hanging around the club, kind of. That's a big thing, right?
Yeah. We constantly talk about it a lot in the podcast, and we're very lucky in that we have a good relationship with them. We've got 3 or 4 different players who have played high level rugby, and everything from coming along to speak to the lads and handing out some kit that they have spare, all the way through to I know one of our under 18s talks to George Horn on a regular basis and gets tips, etc. when it comes to scrum half work. So it's even just stupid things like we have a sevens tournament, and the boy, we had Cammy Fenton and George Horn there a couple of years ago, who both they were in charge of the charity team, and they trained the charity team, and just little bits and pieces like that work out, really well for the clubs, and it gives you that sense of family as such,
Yeah. And Sean, you've got a couple of other podcasts that's worth kind of mentioning as well. I mean, obviously there's you do one with friend of the podcast, Bruce Aitchison.
Yeah.
Obviously we know Bruce loves to talk.
Oh yeah.
But that's that's interesting. You kind of getting a real kind of range of people on the podcast. What was kind of the idea behind that? Was that just you and Bruce kind of hit it off? And
yeah, so I met Bruce a long time ago now, and it wasn't until earlier in this year that we really started doing stuff together with Doddy. Every week, Bruce wanted to do a live show with the Doddy 8 captains and things like that, and I said, "Well, I've got StreamYard. Let's do it together." And we did that for 6 or 7 weeks, and we loved it. And it finally gave him a bit of confidence to actually go, yeah, let's do we should do a podcast. And it's been great. I get to work with one of my best friends every day, or whenever we record. It's a wonderful experience to get to interact with some of these people, like some of these people that we've spoken to, or he's spoken to, are heroes of mine and his. So it's such a cool experience.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I just the thought of having to interview Jim Telfer terrifies me. So I'm amazed
But that was such a good one, because I don't know if this is public knowledge. It will be now. But like Bruce's mum is the godmother to Jim Telfer's children. So, and he wasn't. I don't think he was particularly wanting to do interviews during the Lions tour, but he did one for Bruce, and that was really, really cool. He's a scary man. Scary man.
And then the other one, you've got the Women's Rugby Pod as well.
Yeah. With Rachel Burford and Johnny Hammond. Yeah, it's good fun. Again, it's 3 totally different podcasts, really. One, Bruce is very informal and wants to have a chat and doesn't really talk about what the person does, really. The one that he wants to know about life. And this one's more very current and what's going on in the women's game. And 2 very passionate people who've got lots of ideas and lots of things that they want to get off their chest. And we've had some great guests, and it's both time consuming, but good fun.
But yeah, excellent podcasts. Sean, what's the website address for the social media platform? We'll put a link to it on on our website. But what if people wanted to visit the website? What's the web address?
So it's fybrugby.com. You can sign up for free. Sign up now. We've got 200 people on there at the moment. For it to really work, we need loads more. But it's Facebook took 15 years for it to look like what it is at the moment. So just come and get involved. It's not it's an informal place where people can just chat about certain things, whether they want to chat with other treasurers or club marketing people, or other groundsmen, hopefully. And so it's just we just want it to be a hub of everything to do with grassroots.
Fantastic. Well, we wish you all the best with it. We'll keep our eyes on it. Hopefully get you back on the podcast soon. I'd invite you to stay to analyse Berwick versus Howard Fife, but
I missed that one. It's the only game I missed this weekend.
Yeah, but Sean, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch you again soon.
Lovely. Cheers, Cammy. Cheers, Craig.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye.
Take care.
Well then, Craig, shall we get down to it?
Shall we get down to it? Well, definitely urge everybody to go in to fill your boots and have a look, because I think it would be great in Scotland. I think it would work well up here.
I think it could be. It's a phenomenal thing. I mean, I think what Sean's done, just from having the Twitter account and putting out posts on behalf of clubs and getting games going ahead. I think especially in the current climate with coronavirus and teams struggling for players, I think it's it's potentially that's a really great thing. I would hope. It'd be wonderful to see kind of the unions buy into it as well. I appreciate that they can't, but it's it's being run as a free thing. So it'd be great to see the unions get behind it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're only prolonging it though, Craig.
Yeah, I was just trying to talk around it.
Look, I'm not going to put you through it, because as self-indulgent as this podcast is, I'm not going to spend a long time talking about Berwick Rugby Club versus Howard Fife. But it was amazing, because I thought when we sponsored the match ball, I knew I wasn't going to get up because I had a big thing on this weekend that I couldn't miss, and I thought, well, we'll not really be able to talk about the match, but by complete coincidence, Borders Rugby TV turned up and filmed the thing, and then have stuck not just the highlights, but the extended highlights on as well. So,
yeah,
what I would say is, that's the first game of club rugby I've watched in a good long while, because I don't, with coronavirus, I haven't got up to see anything at Berwick. I normally kind of try and get up like once a season to kind of watch, but the standard of rugby from both teams has not suffered as a result of coronavirus. I thought both teams were fantastic. I thought the pace that the game was played at was brilliant. It was a really fast game. There were a lot of skills on show. I actually thought both teams' defenses were pretty solid. There was the odd mistake here and there, but I just think as a spectacle, as a game of rugby at what is National 3 level, that was a good game of rugby with two good teams going at it.
Yeah, very much so. I think it was quite interesting to watch the different styles here. I know Taff and Fraser Allen would probably have a go at me about what I'm about to say, but it's definitely Berwick looked more forward based, and they had a lot of good forwards that were quite strong in the contact. Whereas us, Howe Fife, run the ball and have been developing a wider, through the ball about kind of game, but they used their backs to the full extent, and so it's a quick game now. When I watch them at training, and and we've played games of touch and bits and pieces with the senior men, and wow, these guys are going quick,
Yeah, I mean, to be honest though, I mean, how could I had about 4 or 5 tries? I mean, they had 3 held up by Berwick. And there's a couple of other times that Berwick just pushed them back. I mean, that's down to good defence from Berwick as opposed to anything that Howe were doing wrong.
Yeah, I think Terry Tuppy went over, and actually when you see him, he lands short and goes to go again, and the Berwick defence rolls him onto his back, which was a fantastic piece of defence. What I will say, but it worked in both ways, both for Berwick and for Howe. I think we got a try that was disallowed because of being held up over in the far corner, but on the other side of things, I think Berwick were in with when the referee called a knock-on, which actually, when you watch it back, it wasn't a knock-on.
No.
So I think we can't sit and say we were hard done by the ref. I think both teams were equal on that side of things.
No, Shav, I feel sorry as Gareth Hill dropped the ball. I mean, you could tell he was fuming. Bless him. But I really enjoyed watching it. For obviously not just for that reason. I thought I enjoyed watching Howe as much as I enjoyed watching Berwick. I thought some of the work at the breakdown, they caused Berwick all sorts of problems. I thought it was for me Ben Nicholson and Ali Grieve for Berwick. Ben Nicholson's Berwick's fullback. I think he was excellent, and Ali Grieve, who's at the number 8, is always a phenomenal player. Let's spend some time at Melrose, I think. But Berwick for me, because the last time I kind of watched a proper game would be the Shield, where they won the Shield final, and it's night and day for me, Berwick compared to that Shield final in a good way, because I think Berwick you can tell that they've developed as a team, and that's encouraging. I mean, I think the former president Colin Framer had tweeted at the weekend saying that was a good win against Howe, but I thought we played better last week when we lost, and that's a mark of a good team. I think that, and it's tight. National. I was having a look at the table, and I think it's tight in National 3, and it was pre-pandemic. So
and it was a tight. I think actually that this game was tighter than we've had before with Berwick. For me, on the House side, Duncan McIntyre in defence was very, very good. I was really pleased to see how hard he worked, but also I think. Ian Aitken, our standoff. I was involved in the team, one of the teams within the Howe when Ian Aitken came back to the Howe, because he was away. He'd been away for a wee while, and he'd had a couple. His wife, his partner wife had a couple of kids, and he came back, and everybody was so pleased to see him back. And wow, he's kicks, he's attacking the soft shoulders. He seems to have been reinvigorated, which was fantastic to see.
Yeah, I've just got a quick. I always want to share this one clip. This is Ali Grieve's post-match interview. I just wanted to share this because it's absolute gold.
You came out of the blocks flying, didn't you, with that try?
Aye, it's a nice little sniping in.
And what a sweet drop goal that was from Jack.
I said to Jack just now, I was like, you wouldn't have done that if the cameras weren't here. So I think you'll be getting fined when we get in the clubhouse for that.
If anyone whether they got fined, we'll happily read that out on the podcast. But yeah, I think a drop goal's definite fine at that level.
That's in my notes actually. I was saying that's a fantastic drop goal. It was just that we've not been seeing drop goals for quite some time, and it seems to this season that seems to be the in thing at the moment.
Yeah, we'll maybe talk about that in Hands in the Ruck. I've got Hands in the Ruck about drop goals and goal line dropouts. But yeah, no, it was a good game of rugby. I think obviously we wish both teams the best of luck the rest of the season. We've got the return leg next year.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking forward to having. Well, actually, we're looking forward to. I think it was said on the VT. We're looking forward to having Berwick up to the up to Duffus Park.
Yeah, there was complaint. I think Johnny McGinty forwarded me a photograph. I think that some of the Howe party were very upset with their chip to bun ratio in the chip shop. Post match, that in Berwick chip shops you get more chips than bun. Which I don't see that I don't see what the problem is with that.
Yeah, if you get
you eat the chips until you've got enough chip to bun ratio to assemble it. You're getting bonus chips.
The last thing you want to do is be picking up your bun and chips falling out of it. That's a waste of chips.
Exactly. You just have to eat the chips. Last thing you want is like 3 chips and a mucko bread bun.
Absolutely, totally.
Honestly, some people don't know they're born. Anyway, earlier today. We got the Scotland squad, not the Scotland squad for the autumn tests, but we got a Scotland training squad.
Can you repeat that, please, Cammy? Because I don't think a lot of people have noticed that, judging by Twitter, and I would like you to repeat it, please.
It is a Scotland training squad for the autumn tests. If you look, it only features players from Scotland and one lad from South Africa, but he's an outlier. We'll talk about him in a minute.
Yeah.
There are no English or French-based players in the squad because they can't be released until the international window. It might have been helpful, given that Wales announced their squad and included their English-based players. It may have been helpful if the SRU had perhaps said something within the press release. I don't think they did. In the news item that said along the lines of English and French-based players will be added at a later date, because what do we have on Twitter, Craig?
Oh, why is Adam Hastings not involved? It's ridiculous. And then is Finn injured?
Somebody saying have they Finn's fallen out with Gregor Townsend
again? Yeah. It's just like, geez, but. I think it's going to be a fantastic. I've looked at the first things first. All I can say is the greatest showman is coming to Scotland, yes. And I can't wait to see him try and pull one of those new shirts over the top of what he's got under there. But yeah, I think it's going to be. I'm really looking, and I'm sorry, John. I'm going to have to say this. I'm really looking forward to see Ross Thompson in a 10 shirt. And I'm sorry to my Edinburgh fan collective, but seeing the Ross Thompson's name there, that is going to be fantastic, and it'll be interesting to see how he gets on.
It's hard to see. I mean, you got Kinghorn, Thompson, and Savala.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, barring injury, it's. I mean, Ross Thompson's nailed on for the 10 shirt for Tonga.
Got to be.
Yeah, and that's and again, he. If you're talking about systems and the way Scotland play, he has the capacity to just slot straight in there with that.
I think so. I think because if you look at the back to forward ratio between the two teams, between the two pro teams, it's quite obvious that there's a fair few Edinburgh forwards involved in the squad, whereas the backs, there tends to be more backs than from Glasgow, so it will be a very easy fit for him, I think.
The one big, it's not controversy, but scrum half. I think a lot of people, and we were amongst them, were expecting Ben Vellacott to be named in the squad.
Yeah,
and Gregor Townsend's gone with the 3 Glasgow scrum halves in Ali Price, George Horn, and Jamie Dobie. Now, you can talk about form till the cows come home, but we've got to try and understand why that decision's been made. And no doubt, no doubt there'll be an interview with Gregor Townsend in the papers tomorrow talking about that, because presumably did a press conference today. My guess, Craig, is Ben. We've talked about this before. Ben Vellicott's 26. George Horn's 26. Jamie Dobie's 20. You're looking for a third scrum half to go in there. Ali Price is always going to be named in there. I think George Horn, because he's played in a Scotland shirt before, is always going to be in there. So your third scrum half, that's a space for someone for your uncapped player. Now, do you bring in the 20-year-old who you want to get in and around the Scotland camp and develop, who's one for the future, or do you bring in somebody who's the same age as the rest of them who might not get a game, or do you bring in the young lad and get him exposed to the camp? And I think that's the way it's gone.
I think so. I think we had this conversation actually a couple of pods ago. We were talking about Ali Price. We're talking about George Horn, and how Edinburgh are really, how Edinburgh could do with one of the three in-line Scotland capped scrum halves, and I include Jamie Dobie in that because Jamie Dobie is a prodigious talent. He's going to be very, very good for Scotland. I hope he's not as good for Glasgow as he is for Scotland. But I think also you've got to remember that George Horn has been a stalwart of Glasgow and also Scotland. He's been on the bench for Scotland and never come off it. There's been a couple of games where he's been standing at the sidelines throwing the ball up in the air and just waiting, and it's never actually got on. So I think he's due a little bit of time from Scotland as well. So, and if you've got Ali Price available, you're not going to not take Ali Price, So yeah, I think you're bang on with that. And I actually, yes, maybe I'm not the dyed-in-the-wool Edinburgh fan that I say I am. I didn't go, oh, that's an absolute shocker, it's terrible. Vellicott also is very untried. He's only played a couple of games for Edinburgh, and he's performed incredibly well for Edinburgh at the time, but it's been maybe patchy.
Yeah, and I think that's it. You don't always pick on form with international rugby. It's one of the factors that you're always going to think about who's playing well. But then there are other things to consider, like what kind of rugby do we want to play? Who else is playing well? Who are we trying to bring through as well? So it's not that form is not the be all and end all.
No. That you've also got to look at, for example, Edinburgh. We have to look at Mark Curry as well. He's been included in the squad, and there's one that's. He was playing for Watsonians on the weekend. So it's the form book. This is definitely a squad to get people into the squad to train, to get used to training internationally, so that they are, because you might have a shout at going to the Rugby World Cup,
Yeah, and that's exciting as well to see somebody that was playing for Watsonians in the Super Six now in the Scotland autumn test, and he's linked to Edinburgh, but again, that's testament to the standard of rugby in the Super Six. That somebody who's played Super Six rugby this year is now in the Scotland squad, even if it is as a development player. Yeah,
very much so. It does show a link as well, and it gives the naysayers of Super Six to it lets them see that actually there is a link between the Super Six and the professional game.
Yeah, and then you got, Sione Tuipulotu. I'm excited to see him in a Scotland shirt. It's Gregor Townsend. We don't know who's going to be selected.
Yeah,
how that's going to go. I think the way he's played for Glasgow, I'd be excited to see him. But then we know we're stacked at centre as well.
I think if he doesn't get used against Tonga, I think he might see him getting used through the autumn tests against, it may be a good way of just throwing him straight into Tonga and let's see if he sinks or swims. But it may just be an introduction to the squad and to training, and just see how he gets along. And you might find that Tooney then will throw maybe one or two newbies in, like Thompson, but you might find that he'll hold back. You just don't know, because Mark Bennett's in there,
Yeah, and then you've got even you've got Rufus McLean, Jack Blaine, Cole Forbes. I mean, Rufus McLean's another one that you'd be excited to see in a Scotland shirt, but like Ross Thompson. But it's whether is he going to roll the dice and go full Tony Tombola against Tonga and just throw all the young lads on and say, look, we've not had a summer tour. Here's your chance. Go and roll the dice against Tonga and see how you get on, lads. Or does he mix it up? It'd be interesting to see which way he goes with it.
You see, this may be the team that that we're going to get thrown about, or get the chance to throw the ball about in the summer tour that never got the chance. So he's maybe actually you might find if I had the opportunity to give him any advice, I would probably say put a couple of stalwarts in there and then put quite a lot of uncapped players in there to give them game time and see how they survive against an international team. Because if we get bloody nose against Tonga, it's a win-win for Tooney, because you can say, well, I was trying all the young lads and I was giving them game time, or you can turn around and say, well, look, see, the young lads are coming through and we're going to, they're incredibly strong against Tonga.
And I think you're right. I think if we'd had the summer tour, I don't think he rolls the dice. I think he kind of builds for the autumn. I think because we haven't had the summer tour, there's been a missed opportunity for these guys to get games. I think the team that will go out against Tonga, I'm going to say, will be unrecognisable from the team that goes out for the next three tests. I might be wrong, but that would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, you see, I'm not entirely sure. There's some fantastic players in there, but he may put a pack together that he thinks is going to be one. If you look at, for example, you've got George Turner, you've got Xander Fagerson, and hopefully you'll have the great Schumann in there. So there's your front row, and that's if Suz comes back and Suz is on form, then he's obviously going to take the loosehead spot, I would think, in the autumn test. But it's a good front. That's a good quality front row there to start off with. So
my only thought is that whether Price and Ferguson will start because they're available for this game, the next Glasgow URC game, and that's the first game back. So to not give them game time against Tonga is probably going to be fatal going into the rest of the test. Those are the two, I think, established players that, whether or not they come on, I don't know, but they will need to play against Tonga just because they've had so long out after the Lions.
Yeah, I think they will play. I think, but then you've got the other Ferguson brother who, are they going to maybe hold him back a little bit because he's just back from injury? God, you can roll, just as you say, you roll the dice,
I know, and you got, again, they got Rory Darge. Again, a phenomenal performance at the weekend for Glasgow. You just think he's got to. You kind of think he's one of those. He's got to start against Tonga, but I see Darge start. I don't think you'll see Dylan Hutchison. He'll come and train the squad, and he's a future. He's a future back row. But I think you'll probably see. Darge must come in. I would, because you've also got Hamish Watson there. You probably find that Hamish Watson is going to at least be on the bench because he's not played for some time. Yeah, if we could go back to playing two full out and out sevens, just to matter. That's my dream right there. That was
I totally agree with you. The problem you have is the fact that now you've got a 6-stroke 5 or 4. You've got these players that are coming through that are hybrids between locks and sixes. It gives so much ability to pack the bench, or to have the ability to move people around in the pack that I don't see that changing very quickly.
Yeah. Marshall Sykes, then. I mean, you could please see him coming into the squad because he's come through in Edinburgh this year, and
I would, it's the same. Obviously he's not in there, but I like the cut of Marshall Sykes. He's got a little bit of bite to him. I think the same with, for example, Luke Crosby as well. They've got immense go forward. I think Grant Gilchrist has been a very good servant for Scotland Rugby at times where we needed, we didn't have, we needed second rows, etc. at the time. But I think Marshall Sykes and has that stronger going forward sort of. How can I put it? He's far stronger in the go forward than I feel that Grant Gilchrist is. Grant Gilchrist is a good operator in the line out, but Marshall Sykes has just got that kind of edge, and I think he'll do well.
He's maybe one that's done well out of Scott Cummins being injured.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with you on that. But on the other side of things, you've got quite a good running lock in Scott Cummings, and if you can bring in a young guy that's coming in that's a little bit more old school, sort of lock forward who's going to come through and be a ball carrier rather than a fancy feet, running fantastic lines like Cummings does, but will go forward in the contact area. I think you've that's a great hybrid. It's a good 4 and 5 compromise.
Yeah, and then Rob Harley in there just to terrify everybody in training, presumably.
Yeah, no disrespect to Rob Harley because he is a phenomenal servant for Scottish Rugby and for Glasgow, but I think you may find that he's the one that's taken up he's there just as backup on the lock side of things as well.
I think he's been in the last few Scotland squads, and I think my theory is he's just there to batter everybody into training. So that nobody and just chase people around the paddock just to keep everyone on their toes.
Well, the thing is, if you look down the list, there's an awful lot of people who have been capped that are in single figures. There's a lot of uncapped players, and there's a lot of players who have been capped maybe once or twice that are unproven really. And having someone like Rob Harley, having Mark Bennett in there, having Hamish Watson, having Xander there to just keep them honest and make them realise they've got to work hard at training, and they've got they're not going to get away with just going easy, go lightly at training. These guys will keep them right, and it'll be interesting. Just so you see, I tell you what, I wouldn't want to meet Rob Harley on a rugby field. That's for sure.
I very briefly want to mention Dylan Richardson, just because here we are yet again with the same old, dull, boring, who's he? Fine, I don't mind people who don't know who he is, but when it's followed up by, and this former Scottish pros, one of whom said, I don't like it. You don't hear many people speaking Scots in the Scottish changing room these days. And I thought, and as AP Cronje, the South African rugby writer, pointed out, he speaks English. He might speak it with a different accent, but what is that? If that's the criteria we're setting for our team, that everybody has to have an accent, then we're going to very shortly run out of players in Scotland.
Really, if you look at the Scotland squad through time, and you just need to look at Sean Linnane, you need to look at Dan Parks. You need to look at these players who have come through the Scotland system. There's Sean Maitland. There's Hugh Jones. These people that would absolutely tear their arm off to get a photo or an autograph. And Hugh Jones was the saviour of Scottish rugby. And now, who doesn't know that Dylan is going to be the new saviour of Scottish rugby? You don't know that. The guy's got a Scottish dad. He's perfectly capable and perfectly, qualified to play for Scotland. Why not? Why not? And we are obviously having South African teams in the URC. We're going to see a lot more of him, and he's going to be playing on our shores. Why is the hoo-ha? We have got players already in the squad that have a different accent.
Yeah, and I was thinking today, look at John Hardy in the Ferrari when he walked straight in the Scotland World Cup squad. And you look at John Hardy now, given everything that happened to him in Edinburgh, and he didn't get back into the Scotland team after that, had moved around a little bit, ended up at Newcastle Falcons. He would have been within his rights to pack up his bags and fly back to make a life for himself back in New Zealand. He obviously misses, you see on his Instagram, he misses New Zealand, misses his family out there.
Yeah.
But he hasn't. He's moved back up to Edinburgh. Admittedly, I think his partner's, works up there and is she's from Edinburgh, but he's now back in Scottish rugby as a coach.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of these guys, like Sean Lenine, like you said, Sean Lenine has given back and then some to Scottish rugby.
Absolutely.
These guys come over and there's the odd one, but there's the odd one, any country in the world you could look, there's the odd one that kind of comes as a fly-by-night and then disappears into the night. But the majority of these guys come up, they put in the blood, the sweat and the tears and then some, and then they continue to contribute to Scottish rugby in the longer term.
Yeah.
And more so than a lot of the people that then moan that they're being selected in the first place.
Yeah. You're bang on with that.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to talk very quickly about the Super 6 because we've got Super 6 finals weekend coming up.
Yeah.
Whew. Well, should we just talk about Ayr for a moment?
Yeah.
All frills and no knickers is what I've got written down. That to be given the form, I mean, fair play to Watsonians, they played phenomenal rugby against
really
Ayr.
did. Yeah.
But Ayr weren't just poor; they just didn't show up.
No, they really didn't. They were falling off tackles. Their defence wasn't fabulous. Watsonians just. I don't know what it was with Watsonians though, because Watsonians they just took the game on, and just went for it. And now I don't know whether it was too much pressure for them, or during the season. It's a short season. Has the pressure got to them, or if they'd had problems, or what it was? But they just looked. It was a night and day situation, and Ayr really, whether Ayr are resting players, or I know that they've got a few injuries and they're struggling for players, etc. So I don't know if they were just.
I think the struggling for players thing is an interesting one because I've noticed the last couple of weeks now that some of the players that they've been playing for Ayr, with the greatest of respect to them, don't look in the condition. The same condition as the rest of the squad, and that would be the worry for them is that their first squad is in good nick, but then a run of injuries and the standard of the guys they're calling up just isn't up to the Super 6 standard. I mean, the fact they emptied their bench at half time and brought on the young lads, who did far better. I mean, I think it was still like 7 tries to 2, but you saw Christian Townsend come on and then score a good try and at least have a bit more of a go, and they looked a little bit more organised in the second half. But
unless they were saving them, maybe they put them on the bench to save them,
Yeah, there's that as well. But they just didn't look organised at all. They just looked like they completely switched off. They looked like they had their minds on next weekend compared to Southern Knights. Who just they
did not back off one bit. No. They were absolutely fantastic.
It was like the T2000 chasing after the car in Terminator 2.
Yeah,
just absolutely relentless. Everything, just running through things, and they're
mauling set pieces just looking fabulous.
Yeah,
and if Ayr have had a great set piece and maul, and it'll be an interesting one this weekend. It'll be a real clash of the front, the packs.
The one thing I thought with Southern Knights, Mama, is that a couple of times they just needed to give the extra pass. There was a couple of times they took it into contact just at the try line, and I thought, there's a guy on your shoulder there. If you pop it, he's in, and. Eventually they got round to scoring a couple of minutes later after a couple of more phases, but against better opposition, just make the extra pass, even if it's on the try line, because if you're making the pass on the try, if you're going to be tackled just at the try line, but you can make the extra pass, the guy's already over.
Yeah.
By the time you've sucked in the defenders, that's the only kind of criticism I think that I have of Southern Knights. And I can't fault them for what happened at the end, because that was amazing. What Sterling did to score that last try was just. I think that's exactly the kind of cheek that you like to see when you're 36-0 down with the clock gone. Is to kind of throw a fake line out to yourself so the defense overshoots, then throw it to yourself, and then almost score the try on your own. I mean, that was just absolutely glorious. That's
and also, but they also got a, if the guy, I've forgotten who it was, but if the guy that went over the line previously, about 5 or 10 minutes earlier, when he dropped it, he knocked the ball on as he dove over the line. If that hadn't happened, then they were making, I'm not going to say they were going to win the match, but they were coming back.
Yeah. It's two tries instead. They get two consolation tries instead of one. Yeah, and all of a sudden 36-14 is a bit of a different score to 36-7 or 36-0.
Absolutely.
So Heriots Boroughmuir. The only thing I want to just say about, there's a couple of things. One is, why is there a zebra there? That confused me.
That's in my notes as well. I just thought, zebra, and then I realised it's for one of their major sponsors. But
I was watching. The thing is, I was watching it and I was making my notes while I was watching it, and then I just went, "Is that a zebra?"
Yeah.
And then I looked again, and there was a small child stroking the zebra. It's not real zebra, but it looked like it looks very authentic. There's a small child stroking it.
It really did look. Maybe it's the quality of the Vaseline that's on Premier Sports' lenses, but I double took it and went, "That's a zebra." And then I thought to myself, what if someone goes over the line too quickly and hits that? That could be quite hard to hit. That'll take someone's eye out. But then. But yeah, then that's fun. Listen, more power to having animals at the side, fake animals at the side of your pitch.
I mean, it threw me, I think, because I'd already kind of looked at Heriots Stadium and just thought that it just looks like something from the Soviet bloc. I think it's that thing because the stand's built on top of the clubhouse.
Yeah,
just this wall of concrete with windows in, and then there was a zebra, which threw.
I've been in those changing rooms, and it's a good old school changing room in that block in there. So, but yeah, that was. I've got to say, the Heriots they just didn't really. What's the word? They had no cares. They were intercepting tries and intercepting balls and scoring from their own 22 all the way up to
that try.
Fantastic.
That try, and it's onto them. Look, I think I retweeted it on the podcast Twitter. I think it's a fourth try. That was judged to be the second best try of the weekend, which is an absolute travesty, because the one that won, the Watsonians one, it was a good try, but it wasn't it didn't have all the elements that the Heriots one had, which is an intercept within the 22, then a pop-up offload, and then a cross-field chip. And what to me made it better than the Watsonians one is the Heriots player looks up, sees the crossfield chip is on, and then kicks it, whereas the Watsonians one was a kick to nothing.
Yeah.
Which makes the Heriots try. That's just I'm still furious on Heriots' behalf that didn't get fired around, because it was beautiful.
It was, and that's that was the second intercept that they had, try, and also the Heriots forwards pack looked fantastic as well. They were out for a.
I think next season, I think the competition is only going to get tighter, because I think Heriots and Watsonians have really come into it. I think Boroughmuir have tightened things up a lot. I think Stirling have tried to find the format. I still think the Southern Nats and Ayrshire Bulls are still going to be the ones to beat next season, and rightly both of them are there in the final weekend. But it's the standard of competition has been excellent. Everybody's beaten everybody. Nobody's unbeaten. It's we've said there's issues with defense, but the attack's been really good. Is it the really good high quality standard of rugby?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the rugby, and to go back to a point, I think it was John that made. It's been great to be able to watch it, and I think we talk about it. We talk about the How game and how we're really lucky to all of a sudden stumble across Borders TV, who had filmed it. It's been great to have the rugby at the Super Six at the time it came along, because it's had an audience that hasn't, it's had a good 3 weeks without anyone competing for the audience. So you could go and seek out the rugby, and also just grassroots rugby. Okay, they're semi-professional, but we've got to see the refs reffing properly. There's no water boys on shouting at them to fold. It was just fantastic. And I think I've got my money on the Knights, the Southern Knights. I think they've got a good chance of taking it this weekend.
They have. Like I said, the only thing would be if Ayr have kind of kept their cards close to their chest. But we will see how that works out. We'll be back next week to see how that pans out. Listen, to all our lovely normal listeners, we're going to bid you farewell for this week. We'll be back next week. We'll start talking about building up to the autumn test. We'll talk about the URC in more detail next week. The Scotland squad announcement happened today, and we've parked the URC for this week. I've spared Craig from having to talk about a draw with the Stormers.
No comment. All I can say is, both teams had a fantastic game last weekend, and we all were having a wee giggle up our sleeve about the South African teams, thinking, what have they done? They've come up here and they think they're going to dominate and they're going to be rubbish. Now, wow, those Stormers boys can defend. That's all I can say. There was some big collisions on the weekend. Absolutely.
So, yes. So we're going to say goodbye now to our normal listeners. Join us next week. If you are watching on the Patreon, YouTube or Facebook page, then hang around. We're going to have a quick comfort break, Craig and I, and then we'll be back to do our podcast extra. But for the moment, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Craig.
Bye all.
So if you're still watching this is the bit where I awkwardly have to stop all the broadcasts one by one. This is everybody's favorite part of the week. Just unclick